Alone in the storm, he never expected anyone to knock, until she and her children appeared at his door, frozen and desperate. Late winter had a way of bending the world into white, of making the prairie feel endless and merciless. Snow lay thick across the rolling hills, dusted in frost, the wind tearing through the bare trees like a living thing. Samuel Hart rode along, the edge of his property, the soles of his boots crunching through crusted snow, his breath misting in the freezing air. The cattle huddled in sheltered dips of the land, their movements slow and careful against the icy gusts. He paused, adjusting his scarf, when he heard it. Faint, almost imperceptible over the howl of the wind. A cry. Then another. His gaze swept the horizon, white and unbroken, and he caught a flicker of movement stumbling through drifts. A woman. 2 children, their figures small, fragile, nearly swallowed by the storm. Samuel's instincts pulled him toward them. He had lived a solitary life long enough to trust caution over sentiment. Yet something in the raw terror in their eyes, the pale, chapped faces of the children, pierced the armor he had built around himself. He spurred his horse forward, the snow spraying beneath its hooves, and met them halfway, extending his hand as he would to a wayward calf. "Come," he said, voice low but firm, cutting through the wind. He did not ask questions. He could see the exhaustion etched in Anna's shoulders, the stiff movements of the children as they clutched her coat. Their clothes were ragged, soaked, and useless against the icy wind. He gestured toward his cabin, a modest structure with smoke curling from the chimney, half buried in snow. Inside, warmth hit them like a wave. Samuel moved quickly, stoking the fire until the flames leapt, scattering shadows across the rough wooden walls. He pulled the soaked coats from Anna and the children, hanging them over a rail, and handed them chipped mugs of steaming coffee. The aroma filled the small room, mingling with the scent of burning wood, grounding them in the present. Anna's hands trembled as she accepted the drink. She said nothing, but her eyes flicked to Samuel with a mixture of suspicion, awe, and relief. He nodded once wordlessly and turned to check the children. They clutched one another, shivering, their hair dusted with frost. "Sit by the fire," Samuel instructed gently. His voice had the weight of experience, the quiet authority of a man who had seen winter take more than it had ever given. The children obeyed, their small bodies warming slowly, their breaths easing. Samuel moved to the door, placing his booted foot against the snowdrift to block the gusts. Outside, the storm roared as if enraged that it had been defied. He returned to the hearth, kneeling to rake the coals and stir the flames. Anna watched him. Her life had been marked by hardship and grief, the loss of a husband to a mining accident, months of travel across frozen plains, the struggle to keep her children fed and safe. She had learned to mistrust strangers. Yet here was a man who acted with no hesitation, who had opened his door to her family without question. The gesture was small, yet monumental. Samuel handed Anna a blanket, watching her drape it over the children. The firelight caught the ribbon she had braided into her daughter's hair, the faded remnant of her wedding dress, a symbol of past love and survival. In its folds, Samuel saw something familiar: resilience. He did not speak. He did not need to. The quiet of the cabin was enough, punctuated by the crackle of the fire and the wind's shrill complaint outside. Hours passed, measured by the slow melting of snow from the windowsill and the children's finally relaxed breathing. Samuel mended a broken chair, its legs wobbly from years of use, symbolic of the fragile structure of their evening, a small act of repair that mirrored the tentative restoration of trust between them. Anna watched him, noting the deliberate care with which he handled tools, the patience in his hands, and the way he moved quietly, as if the room itself demanded respect. As the fire dimmed to embers, Samuel fetched extra blankets and tucked the children in near the hearth. Anna settled beside them, her shoulders hunched, exhaustion pressing upon her. Samuel lingered by the door, looking out into the snow-drenched night. He could see nothing but the swirling white, yet the thought of leaving them out there had felt impossible. Kindness, he realized, was as much a responsibility as it was a choice. and the night had proven both a test and a gift. The cabin, small and humble, became a sanctuary. The storm outside howled like a chorus of ghosts, yet inside there was warmth, light, and a fragile sense of safety. The night was long, and each creak of timber, each sigh from the fire, seemed amplified in the quiet. Samuel wondered at the weight of trust he had taken on, at the unspoken reliance this family now had on him. Anna's gaze met his briefly, gratitude shining beneath exhaustion, and for the first time in months she allowed herself a fleeting sense of peace. By midnight, the wind had not lessened, but within the cabin, hearts had softened. Samuel took a moment to glance at the children's faces, peaceful in sleep, hair brushed back, cheeks warmed by the fire. He looked at Anna, seeing not a stranger but a mother whose endurance demanded respect. In that moment he understood the fragile beauty of human connection, the silent power of compassion offered freely and accepted with caution. Outside, the blizzard raged, but inside, the cabin was a world unto itself, a haven from cold, hunger, and the harshness of life. Samuel sat by the fire listening to the rhythm of the storm, the breathing of those he had saved, and felt a quiet stirring in his chest, the first hint that isolation might be softened, and that even a single night of warmth and trust could change lives forever. Isolation, human vulnerability, and the first stirrings of trust. Samuel realizes that kindness carries both risk and redemption. Anna senses a fragile safety for the first time in months. The night becomes a sanctuary from the storm and from the cold shadows of the world outside. The wind still howled outside, rattling the cabin walls and rattling the shutters as if demanding to know the stories sheltered within. Inside, firelight spilled across the rough-hewn floorboards, flickering over Samuel Hart's weathered face and the anxious features of Anna and her children. The small cabin, so recently a place of mere survival, had begun to feel like a fragile hearth of trust. Anna stirred the children under the thick blanket, brushing snowflakes from their hair, and settled beside them. Her hands trembled slightly, not from cold, but from the weight of recounting truths long held in silence. "We had been traveling for weeks," she began, her voice soft, yet steady. "The mines, the accident, my husband, gone before I could even understand the emptiness it would leave behind. And the road has no mercy. It takes, it threatens, it humbles. I have had to move fast, speak little, and protect these two at every turn. Every day I pray that they will sleep through the night without fear." Samuel listened quietly, eyes fixed on the fire as if absorbing the warmth into his very bones. He had seen hardship before, loss, betrayal, and the endless solitude of the prairie. But Anna's words struck him with a raw immediacy, echoing a sorrow he recognized all too well. He cleared his throat, his voice low. "I know the loneliness," he said. "Loss becomes a companion. You learn to carry it like a weight across your back. Choices we make or fail to make, they haunt us quietly. And some nights, we find ourselves staring at the ceiling, wondering if anyone could ever bear to see the scars we carry." The children shifted, ears straining. They did not understand fully, but they sensed the gravity of adult truths, the kind that smelled faintly of smoke, coffee, and worn leather. Their wide, uncertain eyes flicked between the two adults, holding a quiet, unspoken hope. There was no scolding, no pity, only acknowledgement, a mutual understanding that life had been unfair to all present. Samuel reached over a small chipped wooden box and picked up a broken toy, a wooden horse, its wheel loose and splintered. His hands, scarred and strong from years of ranch work, moved with deliberate care as he worked the pieces back into place. Each turn of his tools, each tap of his hammer, was silent poetry. It was not a grand gesture, but to the children it was a restoration, a demonstration that even broken things could find balance again. Anna watched him, seeing in those careful movements the same patience she had had to cultivate while raising her children alone. She picked up a ribbon from her pocket, the same worn, faded silk she had once braided into her wedding hair, and began weaving it into her daughter's hair. The braid was more than hair. It was continuity, ritual, and dignity stitched into strands of memory. Samuel's repairs, her hands at work, the children huddled under blankets. Together, they formed a fragile tableau of survival, care, and tentative trust. Hours passed, measured not by the clock but by the crackle of the fire, the soft exhalations of children finally relaxing, and the wind's intermittent shriek against the cabin walls. They spoke in fragments, each confession offered gently as if the words might shatter if spoken too loudly. Anna recounted days spent scavenging, nights hidden from passing strangers, and moments when desperation nearly overcame her will. Samuel admitted, though lightly and without indulgence, the evenings he had spent staring at the darkened sky, questioning whether any act of kindness, any measure of courage, had truly mattered. By firelight, their stories intertwined. Both recognized the resilience in the other. Anna saw Samuel not as a stoic, solitary man, but as someone who carried silent scars, who understood the price of endurance. Samuel saw Anna not as a fragile woman fleeing hardship, but as a mother whose fortitude had protected 2 young lives against cruelty, cold, and despair. In these quiet exchanges, grief was shared and hope began to stir, faint but undeniable. Even the children contributed in their own way, speaking hesitantly about their journey, asking about the animals Samuel tended, and marveling at the repaired toy horse. Their curiosity and trust wove a subtle connection between the adults, a reminder that life, even amidst cruelty and loss, held moments of wonder. The simple act of watching Samuel fix the toy, of letting Anna braid hair, became symbolic gestures of repair, for the body, for the soul, for the trust that had begun to form within the cabin. Outside, the storm raged on, but inside, time moved differently. Each crackle of the fire was a heartbeat, a pulse of life in a space temporarily separated from fear. Samuel poured himself another cup of coffee, the dark liquid steaming in the chilly cabin, and passed one to Anna. They shared a moment of quiet acknowledgement, a silent pact. In this place, for this night, they were safe, understood, and seen. The children had finally drifted into sleep, their breathing even, their small bodies curling into warmth and security. Samuel and Anna remained near the fire, shadows dancing across their faces. She spoke softly, almost to herself. I never imagined kindness could be so simple. Samuel, gazing at the flames, understood. Kindness was not grand. It did not announce itself with fanfare. It came quietly, with risk, with humility, and with the willingness to be present. And in that quiet presence, bonds were forged stronger than any wall or fence he had built around himself. He looked at Anna's hands, moving gently as she tucked the blanket closer around her daughter. He saw in her the same courage that had saved her family countless times on the road, the same endurance that had carried her through loneliness and fear. The fire reflected in her eyes, and in that reflection, Samuel glimpsed the unspoken connection between 2 people who had, in a single night, begun to share a fragment of each other's life, sorrow and hope. The cabin, small and weathered, seemed almost to breathe along with them. Outside, the wind roared, threatening, relentless. Inside, there was warmth, safety, and a sense of fragile dignity restored. Samuel understood that this night would mark something permanent, however, quiet, a memory carved into the wintered landscape of their lives. Anna felt it too, that fleeting, delicate assurance that not all encounters on the prairie ended in pain or abandonment. When at last Samuel sat back, shoulders heavy but steady, he felt the first subtle shift in his solitude. It was not a loneliness he had known before, but a new sensation, connection, tethered by firelight, whispered stories, and the silent acknowledgement of shared human fragility. In that simple room, amid crackling embers and the muffled roar of the blizzard, they had built a space where trust could live, however briefly, however delicately, against the bitter cold of the world outside. Shared grief and hope. Both adults recognized the resilience in each other. Silence and small actions, repairing a toy, braiding hair, speak louder than words. Samuel realizes human connection can heal, while Anna begins to believe that safety and kindness still exist, even in a wilderness of hardship. The storm outside had slowed to a persistent whispering fall of snow, blanketing the prairie in white and muffling the distant howls of the wind. Yet within the walls of Samuel Hart's cabin, life moved deliberately, measured by the rhythm of survival. Morning light filtered through frost-laced windows, casting pale stripes across the wooden floorboards. Samuel rose early, boots crunching against packed snow on the threshold, and began the daily ritual of tending the small herd. Near the edge of the property, Anna stirred her children from their blankets, brushing the lingering frost from their hair. She smiled faintly at the sight of Samuel already at work, chopping wood with steady, measured strokes. The rhythm of the axe against the frozen logs was almost musical, a counterpoint to the distant silence of the snowbound prairie. The children watched from the cabin doorway, wide-eyed, absorbing the quiet mastery of each motion. "Come," Samuel called softly, gesturing to the smaller tools laid beside the fence. "It's your turn to learn." Hesitant at first, the children approached, and he guided their small hands over the worn handles of hammers and saws. With patience, he demonstrated how to repair a fence post, how to tend to the cattle's water trough, and how to move without startling the animals. His instructions were clear, concise, yet gentle, each lesson infused with the unspoken knowledge that mastery over the land was intertwined with respect for its creatures and its dangers. Anna joined them in the tasks, her presence a steady counterbalance. She taught the children songs of home, of warmer days and rivers where she had played as a child, and told stories of resilience, of her mother and father, and of the quiet courage that life demanded in the face of loss. Her braid, once tightly wound, now fell loose over her shoulder, occasionally brushed back as she leaned to correct a child's posture or lift a bucket of water. Samuel watched these moments with an almost painful clarity, sensing the depth of sacrifice embedded in each movement, the weight she bore alone, the vigilance required to protect not just life, but hope itself. Outside, faint tracks in the snow caught Samuel's eye. Wolves, he realized, had circled the perimeter, their presence a silent reminder of the dangers that lurked beyond the fragile walls of the cabin. He made a mental note to reinforce the fence to ensure the animals were safe and the children would not stray too far. The threat was real, yet it was tempered by the warmth inside, by the quiet insistence that life went on, that lessons could be learned even amidst the relentless cold. Meal preparations became an education of their own. Samuel demonstrated how to preserve food, ration provisions, and make simple meals stretch farther than they should. Anna added her own touches, teaching patience in folding blankets, setting plates, and coaxing smiles from her children despite the hardships they endured. Each act was small, yet collectively they became the architecture of trust, stability, and intimate care, a sanctuary built not of walls alone, but of shared attention and respect. As evening approached, the firelight glowed more intensely against the cabin walls, shadows stretching and dancing like long-forgotten memories. Samuel and Anna stood together on the porch for a quiet moment, watching the snow drift silently across the plains. The children slept inside, lulled by the warmth of blankets and the rhythm of a day spent learning and laboring. The stars appeared, one by one, pale and brilliant against the inky sky. "Do you ever wonder if it's all worth it?" Anna asked softly, her voice carrying into the windless hush. She brushed a strand of hair from her face, braid now slightly frayed at the ends. Samuel did not answer immediately. He watched her gaze sweep the horizon, taking in the frozen expanse, the skeletal trees, the glimmering stars reflected on untouched snow. "Hope isn't always in towns or prayers, or waiting for someone else to rescue you," he said finally. "Sometimes it's in enduring, in showing up every day even when the wind drives against you. And sometimes it's in standing together quietly, without words." Anna considered his words, feeling the truth settle between them like the first snow of winter. In that silence, she recognized the steady protection Samuel offered, the kind that demanded no acknowledgement, no gratitude, only presence and resolve. She understood that even the most solitary man could offer trust and guardianship, and that such strength was as rare and vital as water in the frozen plains. Samuel, in turn, saw the quiet fortitude in Anna, not just the resilience she displayed for her children, but the way she carried herself, the way she negotiated each hardship with dignity, how her compassion tempered necessity with gentleness. The lessons he imparted to the children were mirrored in her daily acts of courage, and in her, he glimpsed the power of endurance, the courage to protect life against cold, hunger, and despair. Later, inside the cabin, Samuel repaired a broken wooden stool while Anna braided her daughter's hair once again, the ribbon from her wedding dress trailing faintly through her fingers. The children watched with rapt attention, absorbing every movement, every wordless signal that life, though harsh, offered opportunities to learn, to adapt, and to survive with dignity. The repaired stool and the braid were more than mere objects, symbols of resilience, patience, and the subtle transmission of values from one generation to the next. Night deepened, snow piling against the cabin walls. Samuel took a final walk around the perimeter, rifle slung across his shoulder, boots crunching in the freshly fallen powder. The tracks of wolves, now closer, reminded him of the fragility of this haven. Yet, as he returned inside and settled, near the fire, he felt a quiet affirmation. The day had been survived, lessons imparted, bonds strengthened. There was danger, yes, but also trust. There was fear, yes, but also the steadfast courage of shared endurance. Together, on the porch, again Samuel and Anna shared another long silence, the children breathing evenly inside. Firelight flickered across their faces, the warmth against the chill outside symbolic of the growing connection, the trust forged in labor, in small acts, and in the quiet acknowledgement of shared vulnerability. The world beyond remained uncertain, vast, and perilous. But here, in this small cabin, the seeds of hope had taken root. As the night wore on, Samuel realized something profound. Protection was not merely the raising of fences or the loading of rifles. It was the careful tending of hearts, of small daily rituals, of presence. Anna understood that even in the harshest winter, a soul willing to share warmth and guidance could illuminate the path forward. And the children, absorbing these lessons, watching quietly, learning from silence and action alike, were already beginning to carry the subtle legacy of endurance, courage, and trust. The snow fell relentlessly outside, a white curtain, separating them from the rest of the world, yet inside the cabin, life pulsed steadily. Shadows and firelight intertwined, creating a tableau of connection, intimacy, and quiet triumph. In the rhythm of chores, of teaching, of watching and listening, Samuel and Anna discovered a truth more valuable than any tool or rifle. Survival was not only measured in days endured, but in lessons imparted, trust earned, and the strength found in standing together, quietly, against the endless expanse of the frontier. Intimacy built through routine and shared vulnerability. Samuel recognizes the value of steady protection and the strength required to care for others. Anna sees that even the most solitary man can offer trust and guardianship. Small lessons in quiet acts cultivate trust, endurance, and mutual respect. Morning arrived soft and pale, sunlight filtering through the frost-laced windows and scattering across the snow-draped prairie. The storm had surrendered, leaving the world sparkling in a brittle, crystalline silence. Samuel Hart moved through, his cabin with deliberate care, stacking firewood and tending the lingering embers. The quiet of the morning felt heavier than any storm. It pressed upon him with a weight that he could neither name nor resist. Anna moved quietly with her children, preparing for departure. The small cabin that had become a refuge for one night now needed to be left behind. Their belongings were sparse, carried in worn satchels and bundled blankets, yet each item seemed laden with significance, the evidence of a life lived on the edge, of survival against the winter's cruelty. The children, now bright-eyed, with warmth and sleep restored, helped where they could, carrying small bundles, brushing snow from their boots, and adjusting their scarves. Samuel offered guidance, helping pack the last of the food, tying bundles tightly with cord and rope, ensuring the animals had been fed and watered. He worked with hands rough from years of labor, but in every movement lingered a quiet tenderness. He avoided the urge to speak too much, for words had always eluded him when it came to matters of the heart. Instead, he conveyed care through actions, securing the children's sled, placing a blanket for Anna's shoulders, adjusting the straps of their packs so that they would bear less weight on the trail. Anna paused near the door, braid loosened and falling over her shoulder, brushing a hand over her children's coats. She glanced at Samuel, searching for something she could name but could not. Gratitude, yes, but more. A recognition of shared humanity, of the unspoken bond formed through firelight, struggle, and shelter. She offered him a faint, almost imperceptible smile, the corners of her mouth tugged by emotion too complex to voice. Samuel finally spoke, his voice low, roughened by restraint. "Be careful," he said. "The prairie is wide and winter, it will test you again. Keep together. Trust the snow and the land, but not the wind." His words were simple, yet they carried the weight of every year he had spent alone, every trial endured in silence. Anna nodded, clutching the children close. "We will," she replied softly. Her voice carried both certainty and the tremor of unspoken sorrow. They moved to the door, the sunlight catching the ribbon she had once braided into her hair, the same ribbon now entwined in her daughter's braid. It glimmered faintly, a fragment of memory, a symbol of endurance and hope, a lingering pause. Samuel's hand hovered near the doorframe, unsure whether to reach out or remain still. The smallest gestures became monumental in their weight. A braid, adjusted, a shawl tucked tighter around small shoulders, a fleeting touch on the doorframe that conveyed what words could not. The children shuffled nervously, sensing the tension between adult restraint and the swell of emotion that hovered like smoke in the cabin. Then, the first crunch of snow under boots. Anna led her children down the path, the tracks of their passage, etched against the pristine white. Samuel watched, heart tight in his chest. The world outside the cabin had been transformed by the storm, drifts rising like miniature mountains, icicles hanging from every branch, the air crisp and merciless. Yet the landscape, as beautiful as it was, mirrored the emptiness he felt inside. The warmth, laughter, and fragile trust shared within the cabin walls were now ghosts, lingering in the hearth's fading embers. He stepped outside, boots crunching, in the snow, and watched as they disappeared down the trail. The children glanced back briefly, waving small hands, their eyes wide and bright with the lingering warmth of safety. Anna followed, her shoulders straight, her braid bouncing lightly, in the wind, carrying with it the unspoken strength of a mother who had survived another night. Samuel's own hand remained at his side, rigid, incapable of reaching out. The distance between them widened with each step, and the prairie seemed to swallow the warmth of their presence. Returning to the cabin, Samuel felt the cold press against his skin, sharper and more insistent than any storm he had endured. The hearth lay dark, the fire reduced to gray ash, the scent of smoke still clinging faintly to the air. The chairs, the repaired toy horse, the ribbon from the wedding braid, each object now carried the echo of absence, the imprint of human connection that would linger longer than any snowdrift. He moved through the cabin slowly, touching the walls, the chairs, the simple furnishings, as if tracing the memory of their presence. The quiet pressed upon him, and he realized that a single night's act of kindness had altered more than the course of one family. It had left its mark on him. The solitude he had always prized now felt like a hollow companion, a reminder that connection, even brief, could awaken a longing he had long believed buried. Outside, the sun climbed higher, glinting on the frozen prairie, illuminating every ridge, every tree, every snowdrift. Samuel paused, adjusting the brim of his hat against the glare. In the distance, the tracks of Anna and her children trailed off, leading toward towns and trails he would never follow. He felt a hollow ache, the realization that the brief sanctuary he had provided was over, that their path would now continue, without him. Yet he also knew, as certain as the snow would melt and the seasons would turn, that the impact of that night would endure. The children had learned courage, Anna had glimpsed trust again, and he had been reminded of the quiet power of human care. He returned to the hearth once more, crouching beside the cold embers. With a deep breath, he allowed himself to feel the emptiness, the lingering warmth that had been present but now departed. The wind outside whistled through the eaves, carrying the faint scent of pine and snow, a reminder that life was both harsh and beautiful, that solitude was both protective and punishing. Samuel considered the trail they had taken, the marks left in the snow, footprints small and large, overlapping and imperfect. They were proof of passage, of survival, of presence. He understood then that even brief acts like guiding a family through a storm could leave indelible marks on hearts, shaping the landscape of memory long after the snow had settled and melted. By midday, he had returned to his chores, tending the cattle and repairing fences with quiet precision. Yet in every swing of the hammer, every step across the snow-laden ground, the echo of their departure lingered. He carried it with him as a silent companion, a reminder that even in solitude, lives intersected in ways both fleeting and eternal. And somewhere, on trails far from his cabin, Anna and her children carried the imprint of his care, their own hearts marked by the warmth of one night in the blizzard, bittersweet loss, and the ache of what might have been. Samuel recognizes the lasting impact of a brief act of kindness, and Anna understands that the bond they formed, though fleeting, has changed her children's and her own sense of possibility. Memory and gratitude endure beyond the physical separation. A decade had passed since the blizzard and the quiet night that had changed lives in ways both subtle and profound. Samuel Hart had grown older in that time. His hair had silvered at the temples, lines deepened around eyes that had once squinted. At the winter glare with sharp focus, and a gentle weariness now moved through his shoulders, shaped by years of solitude and labor. The ranch had settled into rhythm, cattle to feed, fences to mend, chores repeated until they became ritual, almost meditation. Life flowed predictably, yet beneath its surface lingered the memory of one fleeting night, like a shadow at dawn that refused to fade entirely. It was early evening when the knock came, soft, hesitant, almost imperceptible against the wooden door. Samuel paused mid-step, hand hovering over the latch. The sound resonated somewhere deep within him, pulling at a memory carefully stored away beneath layers of wintered years. He approached the door slowly, eyes narrowing against the fading light, and hesitated for the briefest moment before turning the latch. There, framed by the dim glow of the sunset, stood Anna. Time had not erased her resilience, it had only tempered it. Her children, now grown, stood beside her, taller, stronger, faces shaped by years of hardship and survival, yet lit by the same quiet warmth that had marked their eyes long ago. For a moment, Samuel could not speak. The memory of frostbitten cheeks, shivering hands, and desperate pleas seemed to ripple forward, colliding with the present in a heartbeat of recognition. Anna's voice, soft but firm, carried across the threshold. "Samuel," she said, her tone both familiar and new, threaded with years of gratitude and unspoken stories. "We've come home. For a visit. We couldn't stay away any longer." The children exchanged glances, small smiles tugging at their lips, uncertain but hopeful. Samuel finally found his voice, coarse from disuse in matters of emotion. "Anna, it's been..." He broke off, swallowing against the sudden swell of feeling that threatened to betray him. Words felt fragile, inadequate to bridge the expanse of 10 years. Anna stepped closer, offering a nod, a gesture of acknowledgement for the man who had sheltered them in their darkest night. She told him of the roads they had traveled, the small victories wrested from relentless hardship, and the moments when his kindness had lingered in memory like a guiding star. Each word wove a tapestry of lives that had continued beyond that singular night, yet had always returned, in thought or prayer, to the warmth of his cabin, the glow of the fire, the quiet safety he had provided. Samuel listened, absorbing the narrative like a man who had long ago learned the weight of silence. He realized that his small act, seemingly inconsequential at the time, had rippled outward in ways he could scarcely have imagined. The children, once trembling in frostbitten clothes, were now young adults, faces weathered by experience but carrying the resilience of hope and the subtle imprint of his care. I didn't expect, Samuel began, voice faltering. I never knew if you'd even make it, if the snow would let you live. Anna's eyes softened. We did, she replied, a smile brushing her lips. Because of you. That night, you kept us safe, we never forgot. And now, we wanted to see the man who gave us more than warmth and shelter. You gave us hope. The children moved forward, stepping onto the threshold, tentative but eager. Samuel took in their grown forms, noting the confident posture, the glint of determination in their eyes. He saw echoes of their mother in their expressions, yet traces of his own influence lingered, subtle but present. The quiet lessons of resilience, patience, and the dignity of survival. Without thinking, he opened the door wider and gestured them inside. The cabin, though smaller than the world outside, had retained its warmth, and now it welcomed more than a transient refuge. It welcomed reunion, stories, and laughter long delayed. Anna and her children removed their coats, shaking off the chill of the prairie air. Samuel stoked the fire once more, its orange glow casting dancing shadows across the walls. The familiar scents of smoke and wood, once reminders of solitude, now mingled with the subtle scent of fresh winter air and human presence, fragrant with memory and renewed life. A meal was prepared with quiet collaboration. Samuel brought out simple fare, bread, preserved meats, and coffee strong enough to wake the senses from months of routine. Anna shared a small pie she had baked along the way, its crust golden and fragrant, a symbol of both home and endurance. Around the table, stories were exchanged, some lighthearted, others somber, all infused with the weight of years lived fully and intentionally. Samuel listened more than he spoke, allowing himself the rare luxury of being present, without judgment or expectation. The fire crackled between them, and Samuel observed subtle gestures, the way Anna's braid now bore faint streaks of silver, the gentle interactions between mother and children, the laughter that had returned to faces, once pale with fear. It struck him that time had reshaped them, yet the imprint of that single night had endured, shaping lives as surely as frost shapes the prairie. Outside, the snow still lay thick and untrodden, yet now it bore fresh tracks. Anna's family, walking toward the cabin, the evidence of paths converging, of journeys completed, at least for this day. Samuel felt a swell of gratitude, a quiet joy that surpassed any material reward. He realized that acts of compassion were not ephemeral. They extended outward through years and choices, shaping lives in ways unseen yet profound. Night settled gradually, drawing long shadows across the cabin floor. Samuel, Anna, and the children lingered by the fire, sharing reflections of loss, survival, and small triumphs. Conversation drifted, interspersed with comfortable silences, punctuated only by the children's occasional laughter or the fire's soft crackle. Samuel's heart, long accustomed to solitude, had been touched again, not by transient warmth or fleeting presence, but by the enduring power of human connection, patience, and care. Before departing for the night, Anna touched Samuel's hand lightly. You saved us, she whispered, her eyes reflecting both memory and gratitude. And in doing so, you've stayed with us all these years. Samuel, feeling the depth of her words, could only nod, his throat tight with emotion he had rarely allowed himself to feel. The cabin, once again a quiet witness to their lives, seemed to embrace them, retaining the warmth of memory and the pulse of reunion. He understood more clearly than ever that a single act of kindness could echo across time, shaping not just the lives it directly touched, but the heart of the one who gave it. As night deepened, the wind rose softly beyond the walls, rustling snow against the cabin's roof. Samuel stepped outside for a moment, gaze lifted to the stars that had guided countless travelers across the prairie. He felt the quiet satisfaction of a life intersected, of bonds reaffirmed, and of the fragile, enduring power of trust and care. Anna and her children remained inside, the glow of the fire casting long shadows and illuminating the room with warmth that was both literal and symbolic. In that small, snowbound cabin, time seemed to collapse. The 10 years of separation vanished into the night, leaving only the shared understanding of survival, hope, and the unspoken promise that even brief kindness could alter the course of a life, or several, forever. Samuel realized that the heart he had opened once in a single night had remained open, waiting for return, waiting to witness the fruits of quiet courage, resilience, and enduring gratitude. Surprise, joy, and emotional reunion. Samuel sees that his small act of compassion created ripples through time. Anna and her children embody gratitude, maturity, and the enduring power of human connection. The story shifts from survival to healing, reflection, and the recognition that brief acts of kindness can have lasting, transformative impact. The snow had begun to retreat under the tentative warmth of early spring, revealing the prairie in shades of brown and green, dotted with the lingering remnants of frost. Samuel Hart moved through the cabin with quiet purpose, preparing for a night that felt almost ceremonial in its simplicity. Anna and her children had settled comfortably in the space, laughter spilling through the rooms as they reminisced and played. The cabin, once a refuge from the storm, had become a home again, not merely a shelter but a testament to endurance and the delicate bonds of human care. Firelight flickered across the walls, casting elongated shadows on tools hung neatly on pegs, the repaired rocking chair, and the toys mended with patience and care. Each object told a story of survival, of repair, of lives stitched together by small, steady acts. The children moved about, fetching blankets, stacking wood, or simply curling in front of the hearth, their energy a reminder of resilience and hope. Samuel watched them, noting how much they had grown, yet how the memory of that blizzarded night still lingered in the careful attentions they gave one another. Anna approached the hearth, carrying a small tray of simple food. She offered it to Samuel, and he accepted with a quiet nod. They ate in companionable silence at first, the crackle of the fire and the occasional clink of utensils marking the rhythm of the evening. Then conversation bloomed, slow and reflective. They spoke of the years that had passed since that night, the trials faced, the minor victories won, and the subtle ways in which memory had intertwined their lives despite distance and time. At one point, Samuel rose and went outside. The prairie stretched before him, drifts of melting snow giving way to the earth beneath, the smell of thawing soil mingling with the faint scent of pine and smoke. Anna joined him, her shawl wrapped around, her shoulders brayed loose in the wind. The children's laughter floated from the cabin, a melody of life and continuity. Together they walked across the yard, pointing out tracks of deer or remnants of last winter's storm. The silence between them comfortable and charged with meaning. "Do you ever think about that night?" Anna asked quietly, her voice almost drowned by the breeze, yet clear in its sincerity. Samuel nodded, eyes scanning the horizon. "Every winter reminds me of it," he said. "Not just the snow, the cold, but the courage it took to face it, and the way you faced it with your children. I remember the look in their eyes, trust, fear, hope, all in one glance. It stayed with me." Anna smiled faintly. "And it stayed with us. Your kindness. It taught us something we might have lost forever." Her gaze lingered on him, not with expectation, but with acknowledgement. A recognition of the man he had been, the man he had become, and the unspoken thread that had connected them across a decade. They returned to the cabin, where the children had begun building a small structure from scraps of wood, pretending it was a fort against imaginary storms. Samuel helped them, guiding hands and showing small techniques for fitting pieces together. Anna watched, her heart full of gratitude and quiet contentment. She realized that what had been a night of mere survival had grown into something far more enduring. The quiet formation of trust, respect, and the gentle rhythms of life rebuilt. As evening deepened, Samuel and Anna stood by the hearth, hands, close but not touching, sharing the warmth of both the fire and the unspoken bond that had rekindled between them. The repaired chair stood nearby, a symbol of the past made whole. A braided ribbon lay across the table, echoing memories of childhood and the night of their first encounter, fragile, enduring, and significant. Each object in the cabin seemed to pulse with meaning, proof that human care and perseverance could transform even the harshest wilderness into a place of refuge and belonging. The children eventually grew tired and curled into blankets near the hearth, their breathing slow and even. Samuel and Anna stepped outside once more, the prairie now bathed in the golden light of a setting sun. The warmth of spring softened the edges of winter's harshness, the snow melting into rivulets that fed the small creek behind the cabin. They walked slowly along the familiar paths, noticing how the land itself had survived the years just as they had, scarred but resilient, patient, and ready to bloom anew. Samuel finally spoke, his voice low and contemplative. "I never thought a single night could leave such a mark, not just on you, on me too." Anna nodded, braid catching a sunbeam. "Kindness doesn't vanish with time," she said. "It waits, sometimes, for the right moment, for hearts ready to receive it." The two of them returned to the porch, standing side by side as the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the snow-dappled yard. The children's laughter echoed behind them, light and unburdened. Samuel placed a steady hand on the railing and Anna rested her hand lightly atop his. There was no need for words. The gesture spoke of safety, trust, and an affection forged through hardship, silence, and shared perseverance. Around them, the remnants of winter melted into spring. Icicles dripped slowly from the cabin's eaves, water pooling in small rivulets across the yard. Birds returned to the trees, their songs, delicate and persistent. The prairie, once hostile and lonely, had transformed into a living tableau of endurance, continuity, and the quiet triumph of human connection. In that moment, Samuel understood something deeper than survival. That family was not merely those bound by blood, but those chosen by circumstance, respect, and care. Anna saw a home, not in walls or shelter alone, but in the man who had once given warmth without expectation, and the quiet, enduring rhythm of shared life. Together, they were more than the sum of solitude and trial. They were a family forged through the winters, storms, and years of patient endurance. As the sun sank fully, bathing the prairie in amber and gold, Samuel and Anna stood silently on the porch watching the children play in the yard, their shadows long and intertwined with the fading snow. The wind carried the soft scent of melting snow, of pine, and of the hearth that had once sheltered so much fear and now nurtured hope. The tableau was simple yet profound. Two adults marked by time and hardship, finding continuity, dignity, and the delicate flowering of love. Children embodying hope, laughter, and the promise of tomorrow. No grand gestures were needed. No dramatic declarations. Only presence, shared work, and the gentle rhythm of a household surviving and thriving together. The cabin, the land, the repaired tools, the braid, the firelight, all symbols of endurance, continuity, and care, stood witness to the transformation that had taken place. A hearth rekindled, hearts aligned, and the quiet, unspoken triumph of human connection. The day closed with a final hush. The prairie bathed in twilight. Samuel rested his hand lightly on Anna's shoulder, both gazing across the land that had seen them endure, separate and together, over 10 years. The children's laughter faded into the distance, replaced by the soft sighing of wind over snowmelt streams. And in that silence, the truth became clear. Survival was no longer enough. Love, trust, and enduring companionship, built slowly, patiently, and with quiet courage, had made a home of the wilderness, a sanctuary for hearts long battered, and a promise that what had begun in a storm could flourish in spring. Resolution, quiet triumph, and earned emotional closure. Moral justice and goodness are achieved through courage and compassion, not spectacle. Both adults recognize the transformative power of kindness and patience, while the children embody hope, continuity, and the long-term fruits of a single act of selfless care. The story concludes with dignity, safety, and enduring love.